So I was on Facebook the other day and I was reading a status. One of my associates, she went out on a date with a man who is asexual. And she described, how the date was a good date. She found him very fascinating as a person. And so the fact that he does not desire sex, has never had sex. First, she described him as a 35-year-old virgin. Like, that's how she was like, I went out on a date with a 35-year-old virgin, right? And so she went further into her description, and I commented on the status and I said, I think we need to normalize talking about asexuality, because not only has he never had sex, but he has no desire to have sex, which means that he's asexual. And I think when it comes, of course, I've talked about sexuality as a spectrum a few different times, but today I want to talk about it because I don't think I've never actually addressed asexuality on the show. So, again, considering the fact that there are people out here that are probably wondering why they don't have a desire for sex or romantic attachments or attraction, I think it's important that we kind of normalize that, because however much you want to have sex is normal. However much you don't want to have sex is normal as well. So yeah, today we're going to talk about sex drive, sexuality as a spectrum, but we are specifically going to highlight asexuality on today's episode. So yes, that's what we get into today. Welcome to Hernutmatters, the podcast that dives headfirst into all things sex, pleasure, and empowerment. I'm Jody, your unapologetic guide to a more liberated sex life. Here we break down taboos, celebrate sexuality, and explore what it means to truly own your pleasure. So whether you're curious, kink-friendly, or just looking for ways to spice things up, you're in the right place. Now let's get to it. Now, first, this is probably a lot of y'all first time hearing the term asexuality, right? So asexuality describes someone that does not have a desire or attraction for sex or any type of sexual activities, right? So this could mean that they are not taking part in some or all of the activities of romance and sex. So what does that mean? They might not enjoy kissing on people. They might not enjoy physical touch. How sometimes I want you guys to think about, like, okay, if there is someone that I am seeing or dating or what have you, if I'm attracted to them, when they touch me in a certain way, it turns me on. I'm aroused. I now have some sort of desire, right? I feel some sort of connection to them. That is absent in an asexual person. That person is not turned on when someone is kissing their neck. They're not turned on if they're kissing, period. So some of them may choose not to kiss at all because it literally does nothing for them, right? There are a lot of people that love kissing because it's like, okay, cool, this gets me in the mood. But I definitely think that when it comes to the sexuality spectrum, asexuality is often overlooked. Like, we assume that everybody wants to have sex. Now, a lot of people do want to have sex, but there are still a lot of people that are actually asexual. And because sexuality is a spectrum and it's fluid and it can change throughout your life, you may experience asexuality early on in your life, and then eventually that may evolve into a different sort of sexuality, or vice versa. It could be the reverse. I want to specifically give you guys a little bit more detail about if asexuality is behavioral or an identity. It's kind of both. Again, an asexual person might experience a lower level of desire for romance and sex, especially as it pertains to what is normal based on societal constructs, right? So, for example, when you guys see Facebook or Instagram post or wherever you see a social media post and it says like, how often are you supposed to have sex? Like, what amount of sex is normal? You have the people that be capping it off talking about, I need to have sex every day. Nobody needs to have sex every day. Nobody needs to have sex every day. And I'm going to stand firm on saying that, because anything that you do every day is not going to be overly enjoyable. Like, it's going to become very routine if you do the same shit every fucking day. So nobody really needs that every day. You can get the exact same hormonal release from doing different things. Go outside and make some fucking friends if you want to experience serotonin or oxytocin, all right? Also, asexual people may not feel comfortable talking about sex to begin with because they don't have a desire for it. So why am I talking about something that I actually don't want to do? Like, that's like me talking about meatloaf. Y'all know I hate hamburger cake. I hate meatloaf. I would not engage in a conversation around hamburger cake. Like, it makes no fucking sense whatsoever for me to be a part of the hamburger cake conversation unless we having a conversation about how that is the weakest possible fucking meat meal that you can have, right? So outside of that, I have nothing to contribute to the discourse of meatloaf, all right? Y'all also know how I feel about Alicia Keys. Don't incorporate me into certain conversations, right? Because I will avoid those conversations, because guess what? I don't like meatloaf and I don't like Alicia Keys, all right? So I don't have to participate in those discourses. It is the exact same way when it comes to the topic of sexuality, when it comes to asexual people, right? They may literally avoid talking about it altogether. And sometimes an asexual person might participate in certain sexual acts, but they might not feel a romantic attraction to the person. So, for example, they might have sex just because of societal constructs, and it's like, okay, I'm dating this person and I'm supposed to have sex with them. But outside of the mechanics of sex, they still don't desire sex. Like, if they don't have sex, they're fine. But they're having sex more so because of the other person and because of societal constructs than it has anything to do with their actual desire. So that's a thing. There are people out there that exist like that. 1% of the population is actually asexual. So there's a great chance that you know someone that is asexual. They might be having sex, probably a very limited amount of sex, but they might be having sex, and or they might be masturbating. Again, asexuality means that you just don't have a desire to participate in that, right? So, these people don't get horny. They're not getting turned on. Like, you kissing on their neck, they feel absolutely nothing. You tonguing them down, they feel nada. All right? Because that's not arousing for them. And again, when we normalize these conversations, we will begin to see that literally what is normal is the diversity of sexuality. And that also includes the absence of sexual desire. The absence of sexual desire is very normal. A lot of people, depending on where they are in their age and journey in life, may deal with periods of asexuality. In the same way that, again, some people be very heterosexual, and then that heterosexuality gets a little flexible, right? I'm talking about myself in that moment, right? Because I think, okay, before I turned 30, very heterosexual. I would go as far as to say that while I was a freaky person, I was still very vanilla in comparison to the shit that I do now. I do a lot of shit. And so I'm literally a different type of person sexually in my 30s than in my 20s. In my 20s, I was still very vanilla, very like, any nigga that dealt with me before I turned 30, like, I was still sitting on the edge of the bed when I came to their house. Like, very much a hi, like, very shy person. But what got tricky and funny about that was that once I would never really warm up to certain people. Now that I'm thinking about it, like I would literally have them to believe whatever narrative I wanted them to believe. And then I would go and get like super nasty with somebody else because I just didn't have that energy reserved for that particular person. But in my 30s, I feel like I don't care as much. So I'm more willing to hop off the porch. Like, it's like, okay, cool. If I scare you off with the freak shit I do, then that just is what it is. You're not the person for me. And I'm glad I scared you off. So that's how I feel about it now, especially because it's like, I study sex. So me studying sex in particular makes me want to explore it even more. Like, me knowing that women can have up to 14 types of orgasms and men can have up to 11, I want to unlock every type of orgasm. Like, I've only unlocked 4. So I got 10 to go. I have 10 possible options for amazing orgasms. And my body is just waiting to explore that. So for me, sex is like a very intricate puzzle with like 10,000 small pieces. And I'm sitting there very patiently trying to put like pieces to the fucking puzzle together. That's what sex is like for me. And I'm very committed and I'm very like honed in on it, right? But again, there are other people that it's like, all right, cool. I don't want sex to be like a puzzle. I want it to be like a coloring book. I want to be super straightforward. Like, this is what I'm gonna do. I only need some crayons type shit. And I think that's the beauty of sexuality, because you can get super creative. It can be whatever you look at it as. That said, because so we just talked about asexuality, right? How does that apply to like everyday people, right? Because also, you don't have, even if your sex drive kind of fluctuates, that does not mean you're asexual, right? Sometimes we go through periods where we desire sex way less than we did in the past. It's a lot of different things that can impact that, right? It could be the food you eat. It could be where you are mentally in terms of stress. I'm someone that wants to have sex more when I'm stressed out. If my life is good, I don't really be like, I be so focused on all of the good things that I'm not thinking about sex as much. And or like, if I just accomplish something, like, I feel like sometimes people be wanting to go out for drinks after they accomplish something big. I be wanting to have sex. Like, for me, sex is like my liquor, because I don't really like drinking. So for me, it'd be like, okay, cool. I accomplished this. I would like to have sex now. Like, that's how it works in my world. And that is how I perceive it, right? But again, different people have different sex drives, and it's all normal. It's all normal. But what I want you guys to take away from this conversation is normalizing the fact that, first of all, everybody don't have the exact same sex drive. So you might be dealing with somebody that you may not be compatible with, which is fine. But when it comes to the question of like, how much sex should you have in a week, that's going to depend on the person that wants to have sex the least, to be honest. So, for example, if 2 people are dating and one person only wants to have sex once a week and the other person wants to have sex 3 times a week, now y'all got to have a conversation around what y'all sex diet together is going to be, right? Because the person that only wants to have sex once a week should not be having sex 3 times a week, because at that point, I'm doing something just because you want to do it, and that's not going to be enjoyable. Now it's going to be like sex is a chore. So that's why I say, like, okay, the person who wants to have sex the least, that you kind of have to go based off of that diet. But also the person, what I'm also not saying is like, okay, the person that wants to have sex more, the 3 times, should be deprived of sexual stimulation. Just find creative ways to stimulate your partner that does not involve penetration. Y'all know how I feel about non-penetrative sex. Non-penetrative sex is amazing. And also, here's the thing. It could be the guy that only wants to have sex once a week, and the woman wants to have sex 3 times a week, right? Honestly, it happens like that more often than not because women typically have they have lower refractory periods, which means that we can kind of like go back to back and want to have sex a whole lot. Especially if you get used to having a lot of sex, it's hard to go from having a lot of sex to not having as much sex. Like that kind of like backtrack, it's hard to adjust to. Cause once the demon is kind of unleashed, it gets real easy to kind of feed that energy. So it gets very difficult when you want to have more sex and then you like, oh, my partner don't want to have sex. But again, y'all don't have to have penetrative sex. There's a lot of different things sexually that you can do that will still get you where you need to go. Again, women can have up to 14 types of orgasms. Men can have up to 11. Only one of those orgasms actually involves 2, actually. Only 2 technically involve penetration. That's the anal orgasm and the vaginal orgasm. Anal orgasm for both men and women. And then, of course, vaginal orgasm where, yeah, like, so again, actual penetration. Those are the only 2 options where both men and women will experience the same thing. But again, there are multiple options that y'all can go outside of penetrative sex. So I challenge you guys to think about that, right? Like think about the ways that you can get super creative and still get sexually stimulated without actually penetrating your partner. I actually hate that question. Oh no, it's another thing that I hate. I hate when people say your sex drive is based on how a man treats you. I hate that. And this is why I hate it. I hate it because it's inaccurate, right? Like my desire to fuck you in particular is based on how you treat me, but that don't change the fact that if I was horny at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday that had nothing to do with you, I was horny at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. Like that has nothing to do with how somebody treats me. The wind just blew on my neck a certain way and I got horny. Like that's perfectly fine. I think that the way in which we view sex drive is a little off because I don't think we understand what it is. Like, first of all, sex drive is influenced by a couple different things. I said earlier, it could be your diet, it could be your mental state. You can have a reactive response in terms of your sex drive where your sex drive is reacting to the way someone is treating you, meaning like I desire you because you're treating me like this, or I desire you sexually because you're talking to me like this, or whatever the hell we got going on. But it's not always like that. It's not always like that because somebody could be saying the right things to you because they think it's gonna turn you on and you can feel absolutely nothing. Which again, it means that it has nothing to do with the way that person is treating you. All right. So the takeaway with that is that, again, your actual desire for sex works differently for a lot of different people, right? 85% of women and 55% of men experience what is called responsive desire. That means that someone does something and then your body responds, right? It's when desire emerges literally in response to intimacy, touch, some type of emotional or even spiritual connection, right? So it's not spontaneous. However, like I said, that was 85% of women and 55% of men. That means that on the other side of that, it's the opposite, right? So you can experience spontaneous desire, where that's like the example I just gave, like, oh, the wind randomly blew against my neck a certain way and it gave me chills or some shit like that. I get sex flashbacks like when I'm driving in my car. So even something like that where it's like, oh, that's kind of like random as hell. But now I'm like, I want to have sex now because I had a random thought about sex. So stuff like that. Honestly, like sexuality in the same way that sexual desire is unique and custom to you, I think that's what you guys should really be thinking about, right? So don't be afraid of asking these questions and exploring these questions with the people that you interact with, because there's nothing wrong with the person that does desire sex in the same way that there's nothing wrong with the person that does not desire sex. Like there are a lot of different ways that you can connect with someone on a physical, emotional, mental level absent of sex. So, that's what I got for y'all today. That's today's episode. As always, Instagram has all of the information that y'all need from me in terms of upcoming classes. I definitely got some classes coming up. So go on Instagram. The link in my bio will take you to any classes or any events that I have coming up. We still touring with the Heart of Soft show. So when this episode come out, there's still time to get tickets to the Atlanta show, the Nashville show, the Chicago show will be dropping soon. The Charlotte show should be dropping soon as well. And the Houston show should be dropping soon. So, if you are in the Chicago area and or you want to come to the Chicago area in March, Roses Are Dead podcast is throwing the Rose Gold event. So make sure y'all check that out with my boys, Terry, Roseland, and Jones over there. It's going to be an amazing event. And the event, all of the proceeds are going to go to an amazing cause. If you want to learn more about that, check out Roses Are Dead. And that's all I got for y'all. I'll see y'all later. Thanks for tuning in to Her Nut Matters. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and share the pleasure with others. Follow us on Instagram at Her Nut Matters to stay updated on everything we have going on. Remember, pleasure is power. Go out there and own yours. Catch you next time.